Hey, this is Meredith Elliott Powell, and you know what time it is. It is 8 a.m. Eastern, Saturday morning, my favorite time of the week. It is time for Sales Logic. Hanging out here with my partner, Mark Hunter. Mark, you've got a brand new haircut today, I can see.
Yes, I did get a haircut. I let it go a little bit too long. So when you get a haircut, it shows up. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, hey, we got a great show. We're going to talk about best closing techniques. You know, it's so interesting, but people struggle closing. So that's what we're going to be tackling. So good show.
All right, let's dive in. Hey again, this is Meredith Elliott Powell, my favorite time of the week, time for Sales Logic, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, everything that you need to know to sell more effectively. Now, before Mark tells you what we've got on tap for today, I always like to tell you how the show works. We start off with a question from you, the audience. We cover a hot topic, recommend a book, and because we want you to leave with return on investment, we have a lightning round. So Mark, what is on tap for today?
Well, like I said, the topic we're going to be talking about is best closing techniques. And the question today comes from Joanna in San Francisco. She says, I run a large sales team for a startup. We had a strong 2023, but around the fourth quarter, things started to slow. Oh, we were still making calls, lots of calls, even getting in front of customers. But our close ratio is slowing down quite a bit. Any ideas to jumpstart our close ratio? So I dropped it into the Sales Logic brain. And man, you've got a great brain, Mary. It came back with great stuff. Here's what it said. And I'm just going to summarize things. Hey, review your sales process. Evaluate your process to identify where the bottlenecks are. 2, provide additional training. 3, analyze customer feedback. Gather feedback from customers you did not close the deal with. That's very key there. 4th, consider implementing incentives or rewards for your sales team to motivate them and increase their focus. 5, improve lead qualification. Huge piece. We're going to talk about that a lot here today. And number 6, encourage collaboration. Those were just some of the things that Sales Logic brain. And of course, that's what people who are part of the mastermind get access to all the time. So what are your thoughts? What should Joanna in San Francisco be doing?
Well, I think those are all really great suggestions, but I think number one is take a breath. Expect that the sale, that decision making slows now and then. It is part of the process. And right now, I mean, think about we're recording this in February of 2024, and there's so much uncertainty in the marketplace. I mean, we've got election years going on. We've got all this geopolitical tension happening. We've got the issues with supply chain, the things that are happening in the Red Sea right now. CEOs and organizations are just a little bit tentative. And so expect the sales process to slow down. Expect this as a natural part of sales.
Yeah. Now, here's a couple things, Joanna, that you're with a startup, so you may have come out of the chute and been able to snag some quick sales, which is great. Now you're really trying to have to get into the grind, and that's very difficult. Now, I hear where you're coming from, Joanna, because I'll tell you what, your board, your investors are probably not cutting you any slack. Yeah. I always say in a startup, the investors demand numbers at the end of every quarter. You either give them the sales numbers or you give them dead bodies, but one way or the other, they're going to get it. But here's the thing that I would take a look at. Look at what is the outcome that you're creating, because here's the thing. Early adopters, many times, and that's probably where the deals you were closing, early adopters, they have a different level of outcome. They have a different need structure than typical customers. So go back and look at the outcomes that you provide your customers. And where do you maybe need to refine who you're going after? I always say if you're having a problem closing, look at who you're starting with at the top of the funnel, your prospects, because you may need to do some adjustment there to refine and get it tighter to fit the outcome you can provide.
Yeah, I think that's such a great suggestion. I would also say that beyond those, you need to back up and really figure out how the problem has changed. Because, right now, as you had a great 2023, the mindset of your customer has probably changed for 2024. I know that my pipeline slowed down in January. I wasn't moving anything to close. And so what I did was I picked up the phone and I called about 5 customers, and I just said, I was just interested in listening and hearing. I wasn't trying to sell everything. And I heard their pain point was a bit different, and I needed to adjust some of the things that I was doing to speak to that pain point.
That's
So
so,
go
yeah.
ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
That's so key in listening to our customers. And that's what I liked about Sales Logic and Brain, because it said, go back and talk to those customers that you didn't close the deals with. But it's so smart what you did, Mary, because you were just listening to your customers. Now, I'm going to spin this around a little bit because, Joanna, you may have an issue on your hands coming up, because I see this in a lot of startups. And I don't mean to paint a non-rosy picture, because remember, I am an optimist. But here's what I find. Sales teams, new organizations, they're enthused. They are on fire. They love it. They buy into the process. And then you get to year 2 and you get into this little bit of disillusionment. Sales team begins to realize it's tough. It's hard. Things aren't quite going as smooth. So there can be a little bit of disillusionment. So you, Joanna, need to focus in on really making sure your people are in the game. And how do you do that? You got to help them celebrate whatever wins they're getting. It may be just small wins. It may be that they just had a meeting. That's okay. Celebrate it. But you've got to keep their attitude and their motivation high, because otherwise disillusionment is going to come in. And then what you're going to be facing, Joanna, is turnover. Because people who join startups, they're very quick to leave to join the next startup.
Yeah, so I think you're making such a great point. I mean, you're a startup. You may have gotten the low-hanging fruit. You may have gotten what is easy out there. So you're at another level with trying to close a deal. Now, that helps you understand. It doesn't help with the pressure, just like Mark said. I mean, when you're working in a startup, you're most likely working in private equity. And when you're working in private equity and the investors, the pressure is very, very real. So what do you need to do? If you are through the low hanging fruit, then you really need to analyze that sales process. I would go back and I would look at the ideal customer profile, and that is right out of the wisdom of Mark Hunter, and ask yourself a second question: do I really understand what is going on with my ideal customer? You may be trying to sell your product and service. What you have to sell is how you can solve that problem.
Oh, so spot on there. And what's interesting is when you think about a startup, there's a founder, and there's what I call founder's dilemma. The founder's dilemma is what you're in, Joanna, because the founder lives and breathes their baby 24/7. They think their solution can provide world peace, solve world hunger, and really provide energy to everyone at no cost. The reality is it's not even close to that. So you have to do a good job of managing upward. And this is a challenge for you because, again, you've got to keep it framed right. And this is where I say, look at that outcome. What is the outcome? Because the outcome you're going to be creating for customers downstream long-term is probably different than what the founder painted as the panacea for world peace when you joined the company.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just review a couple of things that we've talked about. Number one is take a breath, expect it. That your pipeline will slow down. The only mistake you can make when your pipeline slows down is not to listen to it, not to take it as a clue that it is time to do something different. If I see if I had to put it in my top 5 mistakes, it would be right near the top of it. Is when the market shifts, salespeople continue to do the same thing. So what do you do when it slows down? What do I mean by listen to it? What I mean by listen to it is I'm going to tell you exactly what I did in January. I reached out to my team and I said, let's jump on a call and let's talk about what of my social media posts are getting traction. What isn't getting traction? Let me see how many inbound leads I've got versus that I've had. I wanted to understand the data and what I was closing. Then I just had a brainstorming session with them. And I said, let's talk about, what's working. Let's talk about what I need to do more of. Let's talk about what I need to do less of. Then I went out and I interviewed my ideal client profile. It wasn't about selling anything. And from those interviews, I heard where the shift was. And once I heard where the shift was, I could change my messaging.
Now, what's interesting is you didn't throw your process out the window.
Not at all.
Shifted some things. And this is so key. So many times what happens is I see sales teams get into trouble and they want to reorganize, reinvent everything. And it's like, hold on. What you're doing was probably right. You just need to adjust a few things. And again, it goes back to listening to what the marketplace is saying. Because here's the other thing. When you take the time to listen to the marketplace, it's amazing how it begins to increase your own level of confidence. And when it increases your own level of confidence, it's amazing how we listen better. It's amazing how we ask better questions. It's amazing how we really understand the customer. And you know what's interesting? We find opportunities that other people won't find. So believe me, that process that you went through, Mayor, it opens up so many opportunities. But you got to be willing to do it. You have to do it.
Yeah, I would also say that go back to, because I know you're feeling the pressure of private equity. And because you're feeling the pressure of private equity and your investors all over you, go back to your existing customers and figure out two things. Number one, what else you can sell them. And number two, referrals or other points of entry into the marketplace they can help you, they can help you get into.
That is so key because, again, we all drive past so much business because we're racing to get the next prospects. We're racing to get the next lead. And we fail to realize that, whoa, there's a lot of business if we just loop back and touch base and talk with people. And that comes back to that thing that Sales Logic Brain said, to go back and talk to customers that you didn't close the deal with. Now, what's interesting is you spent time developing a relationship with them. Who knows? They may now be ready to buy. Because remember, the number one competitor we face in any business is no decision. The customer making no decision. So those customers who said, no, not interested, chances are high percentage of them said no decision. So guess what? Get back in front of them. Talk to them again. Now, to do that, it may require you to do either a carpool sales call. What's a carpool? That's two. That's you, Joanna, and your salesperson. Or it might require just you going alone or somebody else. Sometimes you got to change up that dialogue because you'll hear, or change up who is going to have the dialogue because that will change the dialogue that you hear. But any way you look at it, you've got more opportunities on the table than you realize. Just do one thing. Do not allow your sales team to start filling the pipe with sewage. That's how you get a sewer pipe. I mean, how many times, Mary, you and I have seen this with so many sales teams, right? Salespeople get desperate and they begin putting everything into their pipeline. And then they wonder why nothing closes. Well, because you don't know what's in there. Please.
Yeah, such a great point. The other thing too is that you may need to increase the number of calls that you're making. I mean, when we, sales moves through seasons. Let's go back to when COVID first hit. Everything slowed down because nobody knew what was going to happen. And then when the government started pumping stimulus money into the system, you basically didn't have to make a sales call. People were calling you. So just like you don't question, when the market is really, really hot, you don't get freaked out when it slows down. But you do need to adjust that process. And you do need to say, okay, I need to put my foot a little harder on the gas and I need to think a little bit more because this too will end. Another thing that you have got to help your team as a leader. Do not let them stop making calls because even if February is a horrible month and you don't hit your numbers, the only way you'll hit your numbers in March is if you still make the calls in February.
Oh, so true. So spot on with that. When we close deals, that's the result of the activity you did, but you'll never be in a position to get results until you do the activity. So you got to do the activity. And you know what? We should really be talking about, kind of our topic here, which is best closing techniques. And I think what we framed up is, if you don't do the activity with the right customers, you will never be in a position to close the customer. Now, I got a question for you. Do we ever allow the customer to take us to the close, or do we need to guide the customer to the close? Because again, I got into an argument this week with a sales manager about this. He said, Mark, we no longer try to close our customers. We let our customers close themselves. And I go, oh, wow.
Yeah. I think I'm kind of all over the map around this. I mean, to some degree, I hate this topic. I hate the whole idea of even labeling a closing technique, because whether or not I can close a deal, I don't think that's the question, because I'm a really good salesperson and I could get you to buy something you don't need. And that to me is what closing techniques kind of conjure up in my mind. And I think what we're doing with a sales conversation, and again, I've learned this from you, is the close really begins at the beginning of the sale. Did I choose the right prospect? Have we had the right conversation? I'll give you a great example. About a month ago, I was on with a client who had been referred to me. Somebody had heard me speak and thought I would be a really good, and it was somebody who was in my ideal customer profile. We have a great conversation. I'm talking to them, hearing about what they need, but it turned out that the speaking engagement was going to be at 7:00 at night. I'm not that speaker. Once the day is finished and you've had a cocktail, you don't want to listen to me.
Spot on.
And so could I have closed that deal all day long? I could have closed that deal all day long, but it wasn't the right. So I feel like you do guide the customer, because I think they would have closed. I think they were on board, but I guided them towards a speaker who was a little bit of business and far more entertaining than I was, who was going to be more light and funny. And so I think very much you have to help the customer get where they need to get to, and you've got to be willing to walk away when it's not the right fit for you.
I love that example you're talking about, because it is so many times customers will, if we are not confident that we can help the customer see and achieve something that they did not think was possible, and we're the best person to do that, we need to walk away. Because again, sales, if we look at closing the deal as a short-term activity, we are missing the boat completely. Because as I always like to say, the only good sale is the one that leads to the next sale. And what you did was you stepped away. You probably referred somebody else for that engagement, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. I did. Yeah, I did. I referred somebody who had maybe a quarter business and 3/4 fun and entertaining.
Yeah. So think about that. You actually closed 2 deals.
Yeah.
Because you closed a relationship with a person you referred, who now is very thankful that you did that. And you closed a relationship with the customer because you gave them a better solution than had they gone with you. That's the beauty. We have to be prepared to realize that when we talk about closing the sale, it isn't always what you think the sale might be. And this is so key. This got me into trouble very early on in my sales career. I was treating customers as if they were bowling pins. My objective was just to knock you down, take your money, and run. And you know what? That's not the way you build a business. So when we talk about closing techniques, I want you to be thinking right from the start when you close that technique, okay, what's the next step? Where does this go? How do I help this customer further down the road? Because if I can do that, then it's amazing at how more successful my relationship will be. Because again, I hate the term closing a sale. I'd rather say we're opening a relationship.
I love that. Well, I think that's so important too, Mark, right? Because honestly, the cross-sell ratio of most companies sits in 1 or 2 products when customers have needs way above that. And far too often we close the sale and we're finished. And we need to be expanding that sale for, thinking, okay, I've gotten Mark's bought a product or service that will add value. Now, how else can I help him? Let me ask you a question. I just mentioned that I don't really like the idea of closing techniques. I mean, I think it is what is wrong with sales. I mean, the art of the close, the assumptive close. And I'm curious, your thoughts on closing techniques and your thoughts on, are there any that, you think are good techniques?
Well, yeah, because here's the way I look at it. I'm doing you a service if I get you to buy from me. Because if I truly believe that I can help you, if I truly believe that I can help you make a difference, my ultimate goal is to have you buy from me, because then you get to experience me in the fullest extent. So I do want you to do it. Now, what I am going to do is I'm going to paint the close around your pain or your gain. Now, this is old school. This has been around for hundreds of years. But it's so true, because nobody wants to buy anything. Nobody even wants to be sold. We always say, oh, nobody wants to be sold. They want to buy. I don't even think they want to buy. What they want is they want solutions. They want solutions to problems, to needs that they have. And if I can help them do that, I am going to be doing them a favor. So I'm going to encourage them. I may encourage a customer to close. And, you talk about, hey, you don't like the assumptive technique or the option close, whatever. Again, it goes back to the style of the person you're dealing with is going to determine the closing technique that you're going to use. Hey, I love Hugh Hornsby, member of our mastermind, the Sales Logic Mastermind. It all goes back to picking the ones that you feel fit. You're right. It is so key to know who your ideal customer is. That's spot on. I love it. Yeah.
So, Mark, what's on tap for the book today?
Oh, the book. Wow. Time is really yes. Bob Burg. Boy, what a great guy. Don't we all love Bob Burg?
I've got it right here.
Yes. Bob Burg and Jeff West have come out with a new book, Streetwise to Sale Wise. And
his brand new book. I haven't had a chance to dive into it yet, but I did read some of it in the advanced copy because he'd asked me to do a testimonial for it. Now, if you don't know Bob Burg, he's the author of The Go Giver, probably one of the most powerful sales books out there. Anything Bob puts out into the world always does exceptionally. It brings exceptional value to anybody who listens to it.
And he is genuinely one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet.
It truly is. But the byline on this is become objection proof and beat the sales blues. It's a pretty easy read too. It's not an incredibly long book, but cannot suggest that one enough.
I love it. Become objection proof. Hey, the lightning round. You ready for the lightning round? Okay. This is gonna we're gonna expose the real mayor on this one. Okay. Top 10 strategies for cold calling.
Oh, top 10 strategies for cold calling. Well, number one is if you can make that cold call a little bit warm and find an entry point into it. Maybe I'll look at Mark's LinkedIn profile and find out he's connected to a few people.
Number two, never call anybody outside of your ICP profile, your ideal customer profile.
Yeah, I would say provide a testimonial or a way that you can add value really early in the contact.
I'm going to build on that. Don't think you're selling. You are not. The only thing you're selling is you. You're looking to create a relationship, to have a conversation with them. That's it. Don't even think about your product or service on that.
Yeah. Number 5, don't expect an answer. Like really just expect the fact that this is going to take, I read a statistic the other day, Mark, that said from a cold call to land a deal can take 48 touches.
Wow. Which means stay in the game. Early on, when you're making cold calls, it's not the results you get, it's the activities you do, and you have to stay in the game. What does that mean? You better get a peer or somebody who can help jack you up and motivate you, because, it's going to get frustrating very quickly.
Yeah, I would say try a lot of different mediums. You don't know this person and you don't know how they like to communicate. So try voicemail, go to social media, send an email, do traditional mail. Try a lot of different ways to get connected to them.
Your attitude going into the call is going to determine the results you get coming out. What does that mean? If you don't frame yourself up as saying, hey, you know what? I've got an opportunity here to help this customer. If you don't truly believe that, that call is going to go nowhere. No chance at all.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that, when you're cold calling, really just expect that you are in for the long game and have a strategy around it. How am I going to reach out to Mark in February? What's going to be my contact in March? What is it going to look like in April? That's very, very important.
So key, have your cadence, whatever your cadence is, and it's going to vary by industry. It's going to vary by salesperson. You have to be able to keep that process moving and don't deviate.
Yeah. And I would say for my last one, I would say that, give it at least 18 months. And after 18 months, if you're getting no response at all, it's okay to remove that person from your cold calling list. But I would give any cold call. That's what I do. I give it 18 to 24 months before I remove a contact because I've connected them against my ideal customer profile.
Sales experts Andy Greenberg and Lee Sauls are jumping in on the conversation. And Andy says, what are the biggest challenges you have? And, Lee's talking about discovery questions. It is so true. Early on, all you're doing is you're just trying to uncover what are the issues that they're dealing with? What are the challenges they're facing? You're developing a relationship so you can begin to determine if you have the ability to sell them something or refer them to somebody else, or say, hey, you know what? I'm not the right person at all. Hey, what a great episode this morning. Great episode. And hey, we need to wrap this thing up. So we're going to say thank you for listening to Sales Logic this week. If you like what you hear, subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. Something we've said has earned you a single dollar. Consider telling a friend because it's how we grow when we help you grow. I'm Mark Hunter.
And I'm Meridith Elliott Powell.
Remember, when you sell with confidence and integrity,
uncertainty suddenly becomes your competitive advantage.
And the sale becomes logical. Join our mastermind. Yes.
That's right. And remember, if you've got a question, we'd love to feature you right here on the show. Go to saleslogicpodcast.com, reach out, let us know your question. We'll see you right back here next week for another episode of Sales Logic.